Hey, it's Keisha here with Defending the Early Years podcast. We'll be focusing on amplifying the voices of early childhood educators, advocates, and all of those who love children. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. Today, I have a guest who I bet you guys have all heard of. And you can't just say his name once. You have to say it twice. Mr.Chazz, Mr.Chazz. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited for the conversation today.
I am too. And I feel like you have your name twice because that's how the kids call you. Is that the case?
Yes. So
I knew it.
Yes, I'll tell you the story. So yeah, when you are in a classroom, kids are always, Mr. Chazz, they say your name over and over and over and over again. They all want your, attention and connection, all that stuff, right? So that's kind of where it really started from. But where it really started from was when I was an educational specialist and I was working with 8 or 10 different schools, and I'd have to go to school. And when I first got the job, I knew connection, knew relationships, connections. It's going to be the foundation of everything, right? It's something I'm already very aware of. But so my challenge was, how am I going to meet all of these people, hundreds of teachers, thousands of children, and connect with them in a short period of time, so I can actually start helping them and guiding and being there for them. And so I chose to use one of the tools in my tool belt, one of my favorite tools to use, and I used song. So when I introduced myself into different classes, I was meeting all these different classes, I would go in and I would sing my name song, and it would go like this. What's my name? Mr. Chazz. What's my name? Mr. Chazz. What's my name? Mr. Chazz, Mr. Chazz, Mr. Chazz. And for the younger kids, I would just sing it. And for like the older kids, the ones who kind of the school age children, they would, it would be a call and response. I say, what's my name? They say, Mr. Chazz. I say, what's my name? They say, Mr. Chazz.
Mr. Chazz.
And you can actually hear, if you actually want to hear what that sounds like in my podcast, that became the intro and the outro to every podcast episode. So if you want to actually hear what it sounds like when I do it with children,
run to the podcast and listen to that. I will. I'll do that right after we get off. I love it because I knew it right away, because I was like, if I hear Miss Keisha, like that's a running joke at the school. So I knew it. I was like, I know why his name is twice.
You know.
Yes. So tell us, I'm really excited to have you here. Not only because everything I see of your work is awesome, but also because you are probably my passion twin. Like, we both have passion for this work, and it shines through in our speaking and how we tell our story. So I'm just excited to have that vibe on this show. So tell us who you are and how you came to be in the position that you're in this field, doing this work that you're doing.
So try to give the condensed version. Started off as just an assistant teacher in a Montessori classroom. I learned, I practiced, I understood the gravity of what I was doing, impacting, growing the next generation of humans. But I didn't really know how to do that. And a lot of what I saw happening around me, I was like, there's got to be a better way. I searched for answers. I became better. I grew. People started to ask me for advice. I became a lead, having my own classroom. I was doing that for a while. People still ask me questions. I would just kind of casually offer advice in the break room. And they come back and be like, oh my goodness, you literally changed my entire day, and you changed the entire day of my child. Like, I need more now. And so then that was when a light bulb went off. I was like, wow, I love the impact that I'm making with my little community of little humans. But if I can reach teachers and I can share the lessons that I learned along the way, then my impact can be exponential. So I became an educational specialist, and working in a company of kind of like a franchise, and it had about 70 different schools, but I worked in one district in charge of 8 to 10 different schools, kind of depending on the timeline. And my role there was to, teach teachers to do the trainings, but anyone who works in early childhood knows that like anyone who works in early childhood has 100 different hats that they wear. So yes, I was doing training, but I was also a teacher in the classroom often, because staffing, like I'm sure that I'm not the only one who can relate to that. If you work in early childhood there, so sometimes I was covering for teachers for days, weeks, month at a time. Sometimes I was covering for directors for days, weeks, months at a time. And on top of trying to do my job, my actual job of educational specialist, there were times where I was a lifeguard. There were times, the point is I wore many hats in that role, but my primary focus was the kind of the education portion of everything that was happening in all those 10 schools. Whenever there was a problem in the school, like, there's something that like a teacher couldn't, like was having a hard time with, the director, like I would be the one that they called, like people call when I do like storm chasing, but anyone who's ever watched a Scandal before, this is going to be like a joke for a very niche amount of people, but anyone who's ever watched Scandal, I consider myself to be more like the Olivia Pope of classrooms, and they kind of call it, and I'd have to pretty quickly assess what was going on, what was happening, and try to provide some helpful information, some ways to help the teacher or the child move forward so everyone can be successful. So anyways, doing that for a while, then pandemic happens, most kids go home. Pretty much all of our schools stayed open, but the schools, they're all like 5, 10. We were doing ratio, we were, doing kid counts, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. And for all the schools, they were ranging about from 5 to 20 children for most of the schools. So there wasn't as much for me to do there, but at the same time, I saw how parents were really struggling during this new challenge that parents were undertaking. And so through social media, I started to create videos, and my thought process was like, if I can create a short video that is that is engaging to watch. You feel like by the end of the 1 minute video, you feel like your perspective has grown, you've learned a new skill, you've gotten something out of it, that I can make a pretty huge impact through social media. I started with TikTok for some pretty specific reasons. We can talk about that or not, but I started with TikTok and then just expanded to all the other social media platforms. So now it's a podcast. Now I do one-on-one coaching, but it blew up. It really resonated with people. And one of my messages that really resonates with people, and something that I'm sharing, is talking about one of my big messages, these generational cycles, these unhealthy patterns of behavior that we unconsciously pass on from generation to generation as parents, as teachers, as caregivers. And a lot of my content is about identifying what those unhealthy patterns are, and practicing and learning, exploring, discovering better ways, healthier ways to guide our children.
And that's what pulled me into you. And that's what I recognized when I first listened to you. And it felt like somebody was saying something that needed to be said, that I don't hear said publicly. We talk about it a lot behind the scenes, but I haven't heard this the way that you do it publicly. And it, like you said, it's going to resonate with parents and with educators, because there are a lot of things that are done just because it's how we've always done it. And going back and asking why. That's been something that I strive to this day, and will always strive to do. Why are we doing it that way? And just looking at it under a microscope and deciding, is this something we're doing because we've just always done it? Or is this something that is beneficial to the children? Is this something that is making it easier for just the adults? Like the why behind what we're doing. And your work seems to dig deeper than that. It seems to be digging deep into like the why, as in, where did this come from generationally? Where did this come from historically? Why do we believe that this is right for children? Or why do we believe that this is the way? So in your work, where does this root from? Are these experiences that you had as a person?
Yeah. Well, when you look around it, like no one is immune or exempt from these kind of generational cycles, also connected to, the systems that we've put in place that often kind of reinforce these cycles. Like no one is immune to it. And so like, well, yes, I am a Black man who, I had Black parents, as you may have guessed, who did the traditional ways of child rearing. I got spanked, and I actually went to private and public schools, and I've had a pretty varied educational experience in my life. These generational cycles, like they show up everywhere. And so, well, yeah, I can definitely see it in my life, how like, I unpack and especially as I talk to, my parents about how, they grew up and why they did what they did with me, what their thought process was. As I'm talking to other parents, as I'm talking to teachers, like this is everywhere. Now for me, why it's important how it showed up in my work, because as a teacher, like you're one of the people who is passing on these patterns of behavior, whether you recognize it or not. And while like I think this conversation is usually kind of focused more in like the parent space, because it's kind of easier to see, because parents will spend their whole lives with children, like teachers come with that same baggage, right, with their same belief of compliance and obedience being like the goal. Teachers come in with the baggage of not being able to navigate their own emotions, not being able to accept emotions, with their own unhealthy patterns of behavior. And just because you like children and decided to become a teacher doesn't mean that baggage goes away. When you get triggered by the child not complying, the same subconscious stuff comes up as, with the parents of like, okay, well, how did, the same thoughts of like, well, I did this, I would have got a, such and such. They would have done such and such to me. How dare you? That's so disrespectful. All those messages that we received growing up come back again. And even if, I gotta say this too, because I was a previous Montessori teacher, and I love Montessori, and I am a big fan of Montessori, and I support Montessori. So I'll say that. The people ask me all the time, like, Mr. Chazz, like, what program is the best program? Like, I know you like Montessori, like, is Montessori the best program? And my thing is like, when people are looking for programs, like, it's not necessarily about a Montessori program, because even a Montessori, like, you may have like be trained in Montessori, but if you don't unpack the baggage when they're not using the red rods or the pink tower in the way that you expected them to, you're going to likely
pops up.
the stuff is gonna pop up. You're gonna tell them they don't comply, or the other parts of the day that aren't, maybe necessarily considered Montessori heavy parts of the day. We're transitioning. That stuff comes up. And so what I say, it's not about the program so much that we should be paying attention to. We should really be paying more attention to the teachers and looking for some green flags, red flags, like it's looking for signs of like, has the teacher done the work? Right? Like, how do you respond
because this is people work. Like, I'm always saying that this is self work. Like, we have so much work to do on ourselves as we're working alongside children, and before we're working alongside children. This is really, I mean, every day I'm learning something new about myself, and I'm thinking about the way that I'm interacting with children, and where does that come from, and why am I thinking that? And it really has shifted the way that I work with children. And there's a little practice that I try to do when I'm training teachers, and it's hard to explain, but it's the idea of putting yourself in yourself's position as a child and seeing it from there instead of looking down and seeing yourself as a child. I think it evokes different feelings and different memories. I notice that teachers tend to talk about the way that they felt more than they do when they're looking down at themselves from an adult perspective. And I think that helps me in working with
Mm.
children, just thinking about the way that they must feel.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. So like I talk about like it's not just about like stepping in when I talk about perspective taking, that's huge. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to share a quick little practice that I think is really helpful for perspective taking, which I believe, especially if you're just first starting off, you don't have all the like technical, the tools, the training, whatever. This thing that I'm about to tell you, you can start here, and so much can start to just open up for you through this kind of reflective process. And it's kind of what you're saying right here, or what you're saying right now. It's not even just about putting yourself in another person's shoes. It's about imagining how their shoes must feel with the rocks that they have in their shoes, right? So like it's really putting yourself into their experience. And that is powerful. Now there's an exercise that I would do, and really when I started doing the exercise, it was, I'm gonna be fully transparent with y'all. This wasn't like a self-development exercise that I was doing, trying to like do the work. It was really me and some coworkers kind of like observing, joking around, and kind of like, but in reflection, I kind of started to do it intentionally. It was actually really helpful, really powerful. What we would do, and there was when I first started in a Montessori classroom, it was about 30 children, so there were 3 teachers. The ratio is 1 to 10, and where I was working at. So what we would do is we kind of sit back and we observe, and we would just narrate what we think the children were thinking, like as if they had an inner voice, like, you know, as they're playing and, you know, they're picking up like the toy and they're looking at it and rolling around and singing, going la la. Like we would just sit back and just kind of narrate their inner voice, and just get into their heads. And we did it kind of like as like, honestly, it was kind of like, it was like a teacher, like, look, we just need a break like from the kids, and then talk to some adults. But it really proved to be like something where through that kind of like observation and really kind of looking like, how are they experiencing the world? It really helped me kind of inform how to better approach children, like why some things weren't so helpful, and kind of where to kind of go, what approach to kind of direction to kind of go in. Now, I don't think that like that's the end all be all of it. Like I think that if you don't have a lot of tools, a lot of access to training and resources, if you just listen to this podcast, and the only podcast you're ever going to listen to ever in your life, then that could be a good place to start. But yeah, really getting into their experience can be a helpful place to start.
Mm-hmm. And I think that too often we are bogged down with the duties of the day, you know, the things that are the tasks, like in a lot of cases, not in my case, but in a lot of cases, the lesson plan or the outside schedule or whatever those other things are. We get so bogged down with that that we forget to slow down, and we forget to do the caring, and we forget to do the connecting and the going at the pace of the child. So what I find fascinating about your story is that you, as an assistant in a center, were vocal, you know, and were observant, and were asked questions and asked others questions. I think that so often in this field, I don't know, we feel less empowered, and we are more from my experience, what I've experienced is we are easily apt to just follow along, like tell me what I have to do and then I'll do it. And when someone rocks the boat or someone asks questions, in my case I asked a lot of questions and I rocked a lot of boats, and you either loved me or you hated me. You know, there were staff, like you said, who would come back and say, okay, so tell me how you did that, or, you know, ask questions and want to know more. But then there were people that could not stand me because I questioned things that were happening, you know, or I went to the office and I said, hey, I saw this happen, and that wasn't okay. So what are we going to do about that? So in your journey, Did you get any pushback?
Of course. All along my journey, and when I say all along my journey, like this is, working with children too, like, pushback is a part of it, it's a part of it all. And the pushback isn't necessarily a bad thing. I actually look for, like, whenever I'm doing a talk or something, or doing like pushback, because if there's something for you to like, there's a gap in what you're understanding, and like there's something where you pushing back helps me know better where you're at, so I can meet you more where you're at. Now, the whole idea of like being in the role of, you're now a coach of a teacher, and this is something that, like, I can't say when I first got into it I was always perfect. Like I definitely had to learn more. Like when I went into it, like I said, connection, relationships, I knew were going to be important. And that was like probably one of my first focuses, right? Building a relationship, and that's important too. And there's another part that is bigger than just me and the relationship that I have with this person, bigger than just me in this classroom, bigger than just me and the teacher. It's the overall environment that teacher is operating in, right? Because if that teacher is in fight or flight mode, or right, there's low staffing, so they're working extra long days, and they've been doing it for a while because it's just what we had to do to maintain ratio to meet the needs of the building, right? And now we're also, and then there's the call outs, and you're always the one who's like, it falls on you, but then you call out like the one time, and then you fail attack, but it seems like everyone else is doing it, and then you're also not getting paid enough for all of the emotional and physical labor that you're putting into, because it is so much work to do. And then like you don't feel you, and then you have all these like messages going on in these unhealthy patterns that are just replaying over and over and over in your head, that aren't helping you regulate, solve problems. Like it is so much. It's more than just offering the advice to the person that will dictate the kind of how the person receives it, how they apply it. And so I really, just like children, like it's not just about like missing skills, it's about unmet needs too. And when a lot of times when teachers are like, they're like pushing back, yeah, sure, they'll say things, and they'll say whatever, but I try to listen to like, what is that like? What's the deeper message here? Like, what are you really trying to tell me? Like, they might say like, it's because this person is never on time, and my director is never consistent. I never have a consistent person in my classroom, and so that's why I can't blah, 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 blah. I'm like, and this person is, and I just try to hear the message behind it. Like, is the deeper thing that you're really looking for consistency, and you're feeling overwhelmed because you're trying, like, I look for that underlying unmet
that deeper
need
message
too.
Exactly what we do with kids, listening for what it is that they're missing. What are they needing?
Right. And so, and honestly, everything what I do, the skills and what I talk about doing with children, I do with like, it's not about like just how we work with children. When you really get deep into it, like if you really want to go deep, wide scope, like it's really about healthy habits to live a life. Like it's really about learning the skills of self-control, about learning how to maintain boundaries without attacking someone else. It's about learning how to navigate your own emotions without putting them on someone else or blaming someone else because you can't handle it yourself, right? And it's all these things. It's about learning about apologies, right? Because that's another thing. Like I may say a teacher force a child to apologize, and like I will, like, and people are probably people listening to me right now who are like, what, you don't force children to apologize? Like, how else are you going to teach them empathy? And like, that's a whole nother conversation that, that's a whole conversation. I'm sure I might come back on if you email about it. And I'm sure I'll come back and I'll talk about it. But if I go up to that person, I'm like, look, like, that's not okay. Like, don't do that. without first, connecting, seeing what they're trying to get out of a situation, helping them feel seen, understood, and heard before I start to offer some guidance, they're going to be more likely to be resistant, right? Especially if you don't have that foundational, like that kind of like mentor relationship where they are open to receiving feedback. So it is about like, navigating it with children, navigating it with adults and teachers. And look, it's not just in education. This is like, what I talk about is like all this stuff is, not just with teachers to children, and not just like directors to teachers or educational coaches to teachers. It's about leadership. It's about leadership to the people you're leading. And these kinds of things happen across industries. So that's what I talk like. It's such a huge, big topic. And I talk about it in the frame of parenting and in teaching and like in early childhood, because that's where I feel like I can make the most impact talking about it, at least initially. But this is about life, y'all.
I was going to say, that's how I feel about all of the work that we're doing here. It goes so far beyond the classroom. It goes so far beyond just teacher and child relationships. This is like what I feel in my heart is what we do with children every day, and what we do with families every day, and the seeds that we plant, and the culture that we develop, and the way that we are together. Is planting seeds to change the entire world. Like if we really offer children this respect that we're talking about, if we really offer children opportunities to feel powerful, to feel capable, to develop such a positive and healthy self-image, right? And we are also at the same time working with parents to kind of look at that past, those generational things that have been redeveloped and put a stop to that. How different will our future be if we really focus on that?
Like dramatically different. And I look at it like this is the work of evolution. Like this is the work we're doing is evolution, and not even to say, so to speak, that like we are evolving to the point of being capable of being able to have to be emotionally healthy, right? And to develop these emotionally healthy habits, because I believe if you have a society, and there are societies that aren't as impacted by the rest of society, that are able to, they're able to create their own patterns themselves, right? I think the evolution is us being able to consciously to become aware of it, and to kind of bring in the work, and to find teachers, and go on social media and podcasts like this, and book, and all that stuff being super accessible, especially nowadays. All the greatest teachers in the world put out information for free now, and that's access to everyone, whereas 30 years ago that wasn't the case. You couldn't have, Lakeisha Reed and Mr. Chazz couldn't just start up a podcast and start talking and just it be available for other people to learn, and to, the things that we've learned across our journey. And that is really where I see, and that is, I think, the evolutionary part that we're able to, it's around us using the tool to untap our capacity that's always been there. It's just been used, we're just deep in trauma, because there's so much trauma in our history.
Yes.
And so we've unconsciously just adapted a lot of unhealthy habits from that trauma without understanding it. But now now we're able to understand it with science, brain science, all that stuff, unpack it, release it, not accept it as like absolutely like you have to hit your children. Like it's, it's banana, like it's the reason I say not to like hit children or not to spank children is doesn't really have anything to do with research. But for some people, like that is the only thing that like that's what they need. They need research to know that spanking is not helpful. And then that's something that like, okay, so now I'm going to use this new information to grow, to learn, and to improve. And we didn't have as much access to that before. And so that's what I mean when I was like, this is the work of evolution. You listening to this podcast and you reaching out and like trying to be, you listener, I say you, I'm talking about you, the listener, the one listening in your car, driving, while you're working out, on your break, whatever, like you putting in the time in to learn and hear these new perspectives and then apply and practice and grow. And internalize these things, like that's evolution.
Yes, it is. It is. It is changing history. It is changing. Sorry, it's not changing history. It is looking at history and changing the future. It is going to change the future. And what I see, even just in the last 10 years, 20 years in the field of early childhood, just having, like you said, the information, for me, I know drastically in the last 20 years, my practice has changed. I've been in the field for 27 years. The first 7 years, I was doing what teaching is what I call it, doing what teachers, teaching, doing what teachers do, playing teacher, really. And it wasn't, honestly, it probably even longer than that, because it wasn't until I really had good access to the internet and getting on different Facebook groups and meeting different people from around the world who just do things differently, I started thinking about things a lot differently. I've always been a playful teacher. I've always been a compassionate teacher, all of those things. But I did not look at children and think of children in the ways that I do today. And I know that it's because access to information and taking the time to read the stuff and listen to the stuff and think about the things and do the self-work, because that's where the change happens. When you say, okay, wait a minute, you have to be honest with yourself, first of all, about the feelings that you're having or about the ways that you were raised and how that shows up in your work. Because before you can acknowledge that, you will not be able to make any of the changes. So that acknowledgement piece, that understanding yourself part, was so important to me, and really digging deep. And tears, all those things that happen, but on the other end of it, and never are you on the other end of it, but through the thick of it, as I'm in this journey, I am, it's almost like sometimes I feel like it's a rebirth. I hear people say reparenting, doing a lot of reparenting or re-raising of yourself. I feel like it's a rebirth and a different, I don't know, a totally different perspective on life, not just as a teacher, but as a person, across the board. So this is much bigger than this, than just this work or just one school or just children or just
Can I give a specific example of how this shows up in our life? Because I want people listening to like not just hear us like pie in the sky. Like I want to show I want to tell you exactly what I'm talking about in terms of how this shows up in your life and your relationships, all like how that shows up. So, and we'll just talk about one unhealthy pattern of behavior that is super prevalent, and probably we all heard it, right? Of just we've all experienced it, of the kind of dismissing of emotions, ignoring emotions, the way that we navigate emotions and try to shut them down, either trying to make them go away and like, no, don't feel that way, be happy, be happy, be happy, or trying to make a child feel a certain way, make them feel bad and put a feeling into them. And kind of like this unhealthy, like that unhealthy pattern. Let's talk about how it shows up.
All right, we're gonna do a skit. Is this gonna be a skit?
No, not quite a skit. But I don't know how we could do. Well, I guess we could do a skit. But okay. I'm gonna take you through a story. Okay. It's a story. So, we have what we say to young children is like, Get over it. Stop crying. You're fine. You're fine is a really big one. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Get over it. They fall. They get hurt. You're fine. Get over it. And they get older. You're fine. Get over it. Just dismiss the emotion. And really, for us adults, it's like it's with all the good. It's all the best intentions, right? Like I want to make that clear that like adults aren't trying to like necessarily hurt children. Like I want you to be happy. I want you to, and it can be hard, especially for a parent to see their child upset and sad. And like, it can be hard. And in our discomfort and our feeling and our inability to handle our own feeling around the child having a feeling, we will try to happy them up or try to, get rid of the feeling. You're fine. You get over it. It's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. And in that process, we are disconnecting them from their feelings, disconnecting them from feeling like actually dealing with their feeling, acknowledge their feeling. I feel hurt, I feel sad, I feel frustrated because whatever the source of that, we're disconnecting because we're saying you're fine, get over it. So what happens over time if the child is compliant enough to listen, and even the defiant ones internalize it to some extent. They will internalize it like me, like, we all internalize stuff, especially you hear the message over and over and over and over and over again. But when they internalize, let's say they internalize that message, right? Now, when they get older, right, they have, going to college. All right, so what do you want to study? Right. Number one, because largely what we've like told children to do is to base their decisions based off of making us happy as the adult, make us comfortable as the adult. They'll have a harder time choosing what their major is going to be or like what they want to do or college, whatever, because they've been so disconnected from it because we've conditioned them to care more about our feelings than what we care about, instead of us being responsible for our own feelings and letting them make choices. And so that's one thing. Okay, what I say, whatever, go to college, maybe they become a doctor, a lawyer, or working for the government, or average corporate employee. All right, so you're there, you're working, and now kind of what a lot of teachers almost like have experienced, you get the job, and now a couple months like, oh, actually I know someone we had to fire that person or they quit. You're actually going to be taking on that job, so we need you to work longer hours. Okay, oh yeah, and now work longer hours, you need you to do that work too. Okay, yeah, you got it, you're fine. And our people pleasing conditioning will be like, yeah, let's just please, I'm fine. Okay, I'm fine. Even though all the stress is building up, all the stuff is building up, right? And maybe even you have a family that you're missing at home that you're not seeing as much, and that's something that you want to do more, but you're just like, I'm fine. I'll get through it. Until one day, from you shoving your emotions down, you blow up at your boss and you're like, you said that I was only going to be doing this for this long, and blah, 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 blah. And we blow up because we've been holding it in for so long. And one, we blew up because we've been holding it in and it had to come out at some point. Two, we never learned how to navigate our emotions, how to express our emotions, because the adults in our life always dismissed them and told them to just ignore them and to put them away and you're fine, be happy, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm feeling frustrated because you're asking me to work longer hours than what we agreed, or hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed because I don't know how to do this work. Instead of communicating that, we just say, we're fine until the blow up happens, or maybe the blow up doesn't happen and we just hold it in and it's just stress, and we hold it in. And maybe we manage to hold it in for a very long time. But those feelings, just because we're ignoring them, do not go away. They are still in your body, and they manifest in other problems. It will literally affect it will negatively impact your immune system if you can't express your feelings. If you're holding it all in, you're holding it and shoving it all down, that stuff doesn't go away. It manifests in other ways. There's a lot of research talking about this. Gabriel Maté talks about it. A lot of people talk about it. So even if you manage to not blow up, you're killing yourself. You're killing yourself. And then how else does it shows up in another place, in your relationship too, maybe, right? Where maybe a person does something, or your partner does something. Maybe they don't unload the dishes, or they leave something out or whatever, and you get annoyed, and maybe it's not a big deal, but because you just, or maybe it is a big deal. It's a whatever. You feel some type of way about it, but instead of expressing how you feel and knowing how to express how you feel, like, hey, like I actually felt a little like frustrated by all of the X, X, or Y, Z. Next time, can we come and plan, and having that productive conversation? What do most of us do, right? We just hold it in, right? Don't say anything because we're uncomfortable with feelings, don't know how to manage the feelings, and feelings are, we receive the message that feelings are bad and all that stuff, and get rid of it. So we just hold it all in.
And not to mention that the recipient might not be comfortable with your feelings either, because they're raised in the same, society, right?
Right. And then what happens, right? We hold it in. Does it go away? No. More things happen, and probably maybe even smaller things, bigger, but those things start to build up. And then we start being passive aggressive because we can't actually express how we're feeling. So we're like, and then the other person will say like, whoa, what's wrong? What's going on with you? And you might be embarrassed to say that like it started like 2 months ago. It's something that's really insignificant that you've kind of been building up this whole time. And so, what do we say? It's nothing. I'm fine. Mm-hmm. No, it's nothing. It's fine. Like, but you're not fine. Like I can tell there's something going on here. No, I'm fine. Right. And so, and while like, sometimes people need time to like process their feelings, to express them. And that's typically not what most of us will just try to ignore them as much as we can until there's no other option. And then that no other option ends up being not a very great, like productive, healthy way to express it, right? Because if we just would have talked to our boss in the beginning, we might have been able to sit down and have a conversation. It's like, hey, I know that you have your needs, right? Doing some perspective taking, modeling, right? I know you have your needs as a company, you gotta meet ratio, you gotta do X, Y, and Z, but I also have my needs as a person, right? As a father, as a mother, as a daughter, as a grandmother, whatever. I have my own needs as a person. And I want to find a way where we can both meet our needs, where I can help contribute and support to the business because I believe in the mission and all that, but I also need my time for self-care, my time for my family. And if we can't like match our needs, then maybe it's not a good fit. Yeah. And maybe there's a benefit for you, there's a benefit for me. And it doesn't have to be a big like negative, like, well, it doesn't have to be something negative. It's like, yeah, there is a little bit of conflict, but it's not bad. It's a way, it's identifying like, hey, there's some conflict here. Let's figure out a way to move forward.
So what would you say is a way to enculturate some of this type of practice in work settings for adults? Like what would you say, if we have some directors here listening, what would be a good way to just kind of starting to get this practice the norm? What things can they implement?
I love the word you use, enculturate, because it is about creating a culture. Because again, people are going to come with their baggage, like, because it's not just about you because we don't want to do like, oh, I have an open door policy. I open the door, but no one seems to come in, right? Like, like it's probably because you haven't created a culture where people feel comfortable to come in your office and sit down on their lunch break and talk to you about what's going on, right? And so, there's there are a lot of kind of parts to this. You know, the big thing that I would say is that in terms of the emotion specifically is one, creating that feeling of safety, the culture of safety, of teachers feeling safe, which can be hard, which in my experience, I would say most teachers don't feel safe enough to care for children the way that we would hope and expect. And that comes from a lot of things that are not just, it's not just on the director. I think it's also, part of it is symptoms of like kind of greater, but you as a director still have a lot of power in how you create your culture inside. So here's what I would do. If you want, I would get some people together, like get some people together where I called it an action learning team when I was doing it in my schools, when I was doing it as a teacher, when I was doing it as an educational specialist. Well, we called it different things: action learning, leadership, whatever. But get people who are already kind of invested and want to see growth in the school, growth in the culture, growth in the quality of life for everyone there, and encourage them to reach and have conversations and a talk and create spaces and time for that, right? And when you're doing your meetings, like create time into that, you know. Having a relationship is the foundation for everything. And so you as a director, you may not have that close relationship with everyone. But if you can have a close relationship, at least with people who have closer relationships with most, if not all, the other, you know, teachers in the building, you'll be more likely to hear what's really going on, how people are really feeling, so you can really kind of so your culture won't be stale. So you're not doing something that you think is great and then everyone else is just like, yeah, we'll do it because you're paying me, but
yeah,
I don't really see the point or the value in this.
Yeah. Well, Chazz, I really have enjoyed this, and we have got to do it again. Before we end this, though, can you please tell us how our listeners can get in touch with you, find out more about your work, and anything else, any last minute things you want to leave us with?
Yeah, look, I'm anyone out here. I know there's a lot of educators who are listening. I don't know, regardless of where you're at, I've worked really at every level. Like I said, in the classroom, the director level, coaching teachers, I've seen the district directors and the owners, and I've seen how all that stuff impacts from the top to the bottom, all the way down, from the owner of a large company to the assistant teacher to the child in the infant room. I see how all of that stuff connects. And if you are looking for help in your school to kind of to create a better culture, a healthier culture, where everyone is looking forward to coming to work, to going to school, to coming into these caring environments, definitely reach out to me. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. My podcast is Mr.Chazz's Leadership, Parenting, and Teaching Podcast. You can just find me if you type in Mr. Chazz, and that's Chazz with two Z's. If you type in Mr. Chazz, you'll find me on any of the platforms. I'm pretty sure the most popular Mr. Chazz that I know of. And I got a little megaphone in my profile because I'm trying to spread the word. I'm trying to change the world. So that's me, and that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chazz, Mr. Chazz.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Lakeisha, and I look forward to more talks because, man, I love having them.
I do too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
And that was another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. Defending the Early Years works to support the rights and needs of young children nationally. Learn more at DEY.org. Pay us a visit, sign up for our newsletter, or connect with us on social media. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.